Shortly after, we brought out the Series 1. Now we have over here a Series 1 200 watt head. So with the Series 1 stuff, came very, very shortly after the Artisan range. And this was aiming more towards the modern high gain player. But let me go through some of the channels on here. This is probably the most diverse of the range. But the cool thing about Blackstar is they're very proud of their patents. So if anyone heard of ISF before? Basically, the ISF feature, ever since the early Fenders, which were the first amps on the planet, for guitarists, there's always been a bass, a middle and a treble. And most guitarists know where they're going with that. It's nice and easy. For an amplifier designer, it'd be ideal to have a parametric EQ, so you can get any sound that you want really for your guitar. But obviously for us guitar players, we like to just speak the beer, first chord. So to have one more dial at the end, it wasn't too strenuous for us. But basically what it does is once you've set your tone stack, you can then grab the ISF and move the tone stack around, which allows you to really sonically change the sound and the reaction of the amplifier. Now, if you've ever seen any Blackstar stuff up close, you'll see it's usually got an American cab and a British London taxi to give you a British or American style tone. Generally what happens when you go over to the American side is the EQ tone stack becomes more scooped and you get those pushed trebles, which is inherent of a lot of American style amps. And over to the British side, the mids tend to open up and get a bit more low end. So you can really sonically change your amp to whatever you want. The second patent in Series 1 is the dynamic power reduction here, which is a dial that basically takes you down to 10% of what the amp's about. So you might look at this and think 200 watt, never going to need that. You can actually turn it down to 20 and anything in between. Now, Bruce, coming back to Bruce again, he was when he was at Marshall, he designed the attenuator, the power brake, Marshall power brake unit, which generally for him, and these are his words, he felt was a flawed design because an attenuator sits between the head and a cab and basically acts as a buffer. So you turn it all the way down, crank everything up on the head so it's pushing those valves harder, and then you increase the attenuator. But what it's doing is letting the speakers not receive everything that they should. So the DPR circuitry actually sits in the transformer in these amps and simply just reduces and increases voltage to the power amp tubes. So your guitar tone doesn't change. When you dig in and you get that kind of speaker sag, it still happens when it's at low volume, which I'll show you in a second. But as far as sound goes, let's get some tones going. So currently we have a clean channel, an overdrive channel, crunch, sorry, and then overdrive 1, overdrive 2. So it's a 4-channel head. As I said, this is probably the most versatile range. We've got bass, middle, treble and ISF for the first 2 channels, clean and crunch, and then a tone stack and the ISF for the overdrives. So essentially what I've done here is I've set the top 2 channels, clean and crunch, to more of a British vibe, and the lower 2 to more of an American vibe. So to get all those kind of sounds out of one box, you'd have to be, it's difficult, you know? I mean, you see people like Dave Grohl and Joe Perry, and they have tons of different amps behind them, they're switching, or somebody's switching for them. They might have an old Fender Twin, an old AC30, an old Plexi. So they've got the best of every world. This is what this is trying to do, without being obvious about it. So, for example, on the clean channel we have a voicing switch, bright clean and warm clean. So at the moment it's warm, and I've got my gain stage for that channel back. So it still remains nice and clean. Blackstar are really passionate about getting guitar players to talk about clean again. It's not many people do. So great for just putting your pedals into, of course. Bright clean, hopefully you'll hear a difference here. Yeah, so it's more shimmering. But if I turn that volume gain up there on that particular clean channel, we're virtually getting a crunch tone, or a really classic kind of plexi cranked style sound. And that's the versatility of all our clean sounds. Pretty cool. Onto the crunch. Definitely that British vibe going on. Okay? Just to let you guys know as well, I've got a switch here which I can go from single coil to humbucker, but if we're on the humbucker there, yeah, nice old school Marshall sound. Onto the overdrive 1, now we're on the American thing. Definitely more of that mid scoop, high gain, then OD2. Pretty versatile, hey? All these amps come with foot switches. They're all MIDI as well, so you can actually switch the channel voicing via a MIDI signal. Pretty cool. ISF. Let me just show you what's happening there. Okay, so we're currently American. Over to that British side, push mids, more low end. And that's basically what ISF's giving you, pushing a lot. But we're still running at 200 watts, believe it or not. So watch what happens when I reduce that. The sound of the guitar doesn't change, it just gets a bit slimmer and quieter. But the speakers are still giving you the chunk that you need. Pretty cool. And with all that in use, you know, if you're in the studio, live, it can be hugely useful, you know. So that's the Series 1 range, and that's really the heritage ranges that we do, you know, high-end stuff.